TruthSeekah and or its affiliates are not responsible for any strange phenomena that may occur during or after listening to this podcast, which may include the following: heightened senses of awareness, psychic abilities, UFO sightings, alien contact, time loss, out-of-body experiences, ringing in the ears, ESP, lucid dreaming, increased synchronicities, astral projection, telepathy, stronger intuition, levitation, miraculous healings, and or remote viewing. Please be advised to listen at your own discretion.
Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? To a place to walk on troubled seas, faith to stand when I don't believe. I just wanna be with you. Won't you come and take me away? I just wanna be with you. Won't you come?
You are now locked into the TruthSeekah podcast.
Gargoyles, psychics, everything's ungodly. Dark Savage.
Streaming live at TruthSeekah.com.
She's not a Christian.
Give it up, y'all.
Your portal to the paranormal, esoteric, and all things spiritual.
She's tampering in dark sided stuff.
And now, your host, TruthSeekah.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, what's going on? This is the TruthSeekah podcast. I'm your host, TruthSeekah. So we got a great show planned for you guys today. I'm going to try to do my best. I'm a little bit under the weather with my sinuses, but we're going to get into this information and talk about some steps that we can take to achieving our goals and living the best life that we want for ourselves and kind of create this life that we want, our dreams and visions. We're going to get into a little bit of that stuff here in a few minutes. I can't go any further without saying thank you guys to everybody who enables me to create this show, all the Patreon supporters. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of my heart. You guys mean the world to me. Couldn't do it without you. Got a couple patrons we're going to give shouts out to right quick. Some of the people who have come on and joined with us within the last week or so. Give a shout out to Callie Patricia Ween, Tiger King, Joshua DeLeon, and yeah, that's it. Those couple people there. Special thank you to Noah, Adam Brink, and Benny Ween, who are supporting at the diamond body level. Thank you guys so much for all of that. Shout out to Benny. Benny's got his whole family signed up to as patrons here, man. He got him, his wife, and his dog gives. His dog gives monthly as well. So thank you guys for all the support. It means the world. If you would like to support my work, head on over to patreon.com. Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. There you get access to my entire discography of music, 10 plus albums. You also get access to Unreleased podcast and little special behind the scenes stuff. You get access to our Thursday night School of the Mystics sessions, which have been really fun. Every Thursday night we do that, led everyone in a prayer and guided meditation this past Thursday. Really good. That's available for you guys to go back and listen to as well if you weren't able to make it. So head on over there and you get a bunch of cool perks, get all the new music. There's a bunch of new music that I'm working on right now that's already available and it's not available to the general public. So patreon.com/TruthSeekah. Get access there. Got a date coming up. September the 22nd, I will be at Shanti Fest. Some friends over there are putting together a festival. It's like an all-day event. Music, yoga, dancing, massages, body painting, glass blowing, performances, sound healing, bunch of cool stuff. We're going to be hanging out. I got a big crew coming from Mobile. We're going to take the trip over there. Other friends coming up from Orlando. Shanti Fest in Tallahassee, Florida, September 22nd. I will be performing there, and it's probably going to be the first time that I'm going to do a live podcast. So we're going to do a podcast there with a live audience, I'm going to be interviewing my homie Ja Love, who is a music artist and spiritual person as well. So it's going to be really good. So if you want to be a part of that, be in the audience, we're going to have that going too. So September the 22nd, Shanti Music Festival in Tallahassee, Florida. I think tickets are only $5 at the door, so really cheap. I'd love to see you guys there. All that info is at TruthSeekah.com. Head on over there to check that stuff out. So without further ado, we're going to bring in our guest today. I'm going to be speaking with someone who is into helping you obtain your goals, your dreams, and he's got some steps and sequences and things that he's actually got mapped out in 9 books so far. I think all of these books kind of work together, but today we're going to be speaking about his latest book. My guest today is John Vespasian. John, welcome to the TruthSeekah podcast, sir. How are you?
Hi, Derek. Thanks for having me on.
Awesome, man. Thank you for coming on with me. No video today. You don't really show your face. I've tried to find pictures of you. There's not really anything online.
That's true. That's true. I try to keep my privacy. Something that I recommend in my books, that people should try to separate their business from their private life, unless you are a celebrity, an artist, a performer. I think for most people, it's a good way to go to separate their business from their private life.
Yeah, there's a lot of musicians and artists who've come out over the years who wear masks or even change their look on stage for that reason, so that they can go out to eat with their family on a Friday night at a restaurant, you know what I'm saying, without being bombarded with people wanting to take pictures and autographs and just everybody in the whole restaurant staring, making it uncomfortable. They've wore a mask, or like I said, even change the way that they look on stage so that they can keep that privacy.
That's very important, especially if you travel. I happen to live in Europe, and I travel a lot. So this is what I recommend. So I try to preach with example.
That's good stuff. It's getting kind of weird. Like, I'm getting a little bit more renowned. People are starting to recognize me in public. People know who I am, you know, before I know who they are. And it's kind of awkward. I could see where that would come in handy to try to keep your face off of stuff, you know. It does get awkward. People coming up to you and, you know, wanting to talk and just like mid-conversation cutting you off, and just it gets kind of weird. And I guess the more renowned and the bigger you get, it only gets worse, right?
Yeah, especially if you have long-term plans and you expect to grow exponentially in the next years. I think it's very good to develop a stage persona separated from your private life.
That's good. So you got 9 books. This is your 9th book, which is Sequentiality. We've heard of spirituality. We've heard of all these other alities, but Sequentiality. All of these books kind of work together and have come to a head with this latest one. Talk a little bit about what that term sequentiality means.
Yeah, sequentiality is an approach to personal development. The word sequentiality comes from sequence. What I have done in this book is to show an alternative to the current paradigm, which is positive thinking. Nowadays, you will not open a book on personal development without reading about positive thinking. Seems to be the absolute truth, seems to be what everybody has to do. And what sequentiality does is to show through historical examples, because all my books are based on history, they are based on real persons, that there is an alternative. There's an alternative that does not involve so much emotional energy, because one of the problems with positive thinking is that it eats up all your energies. Unless you are naturally extroverted, and there are not that many people who are naturally extroverted, maybe 10%. If you try to be overly enthusiastic all the time, even when you're feeling down, very cheerful, you will not have energies for doing anything else. It will eat up all your energies. It will consume all your resources, and you will not get anything done. And the idea of sequentiality is that in most cases, I would say 90%, people will achieve much more in life, in their careers, in their personal life, in their personal finances, if they just focus on finding the right sequence of steps. This is why I call it sequentiality, to find the right sequence of steps instead of getting so emotionally worked up, because it consumes your energies. It does not lead anywhere.
So you have a bunch of steps here. There's different ways that we can find these steps, categorize them, make sure we're taking the right steps, asking the question. There's a bunch of stuff that you have outlined to actually do that. So is this personal? Is this some things that have kind of happened for you to kind of get to that level where you want to be?
No. What I have done in the book is to take a look at biographies of different people, different centuries, and to draw the patterns that show how people find the sequence of steps. There is not a universal formula, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this is what you have to do. This would be very unrealistic, because everybody's going to have his own background, his own circumstances. But there are patterns, and I can give you a few patterns from different stories. One of the patterns that emerges when you look at hundreds of biographies of people who have been very successful is that in whatever area they work, no matter which country, which century, it does not really matter. You will find always in successful people who are also very happy, that they have spent years of their lives building some kind of assets. And this is not self-evident, because when we talk about assets, most people will think about money, they will think about houses, but it's not the only type of assets. If you build skills, if you build social networks, if you build reputation, those are assets. And many people have built very successful careers on this type of assets. But it's almost impossible to become, I would say, successful, to do it to a good extent. It's almost impossible to be happy in the long term if you are not building constantly some kind of assets. If you are very introverted, if you're very isolated, if you're very aggressive, and sometimes you see these hedge fund managers, they're extremely aggressive, but they don't build some kind of assets, you have to start every day from scratch. And this is something that whatever biography you look into in the past, and I have in this book, I have compiled about 30 different biographies. This is a pattern that you will always find.
Who are some of the people that you've kind of studied with these paths and steps?
Let me just give you an example. One of the biographies I present in the book, and I found it super interesting, is the life of Humboldt, Alexander von Humboldt. He might not be very well known in the US, but in Germany, in Europe, he certainly is very well known, because the University of Berlin is named after Humboldt. And Humboldt had a very interesting career, because he had a very boring job. I mean, he had a job that he hated. He studied geology in university. He tried to find a job in exploration, but he couldn't. There were no jobs available. So eventually he ended up as a mine inspector. It was a completely soul-crushing, super boring job. He did it for years. He tried to get out of it. And eventually he changed his life completely. And this is why I found the story so interesting. Because he didn't have a very specific plan about what he wanted to do. At a certain point, he inherited some money from his mother. It was not a huge fortune. If imagine you inherit a house from your parents. What most people do in those situations is just to sell the house and to buy a new car, to buy maybe some equipment. But very few people will use the money to change their lives. And what Humboldt did, and it's something that is almost unique in the 19th century, he quit his job and he used the money he inherited to try to find the sponsors, like you just mentioned at the beginning of the show, people who sponsor your show. He tried to find the sponsors to go on an expedition to South America. He wanted to explore Mexico, to explore Argentina, to explore different countries. And he went to France to talk to Napoleon. He went to Spain. He went to Belgium, and he failed. He failed totally and completely. And eventually what he did, and this is the real point of the story, he used the little money he had left, because he already spent half of it. to go to South America with a friend. He walked from Mexico to Argentina. He spent 18 months at very low cost. Like many people today, they move their business to Thailand, or they move their business to Costa Rica because it's very, very inexpensive. He spent 18 months. He took notes. He made drawings. And when he came back to Europe, he published those drawings and notes in 8 volumes, and he became a celebrity overnight. He created a massive asset. He became very well known as a naturalist. And from that moment on, he built an amazing career in different countries. He got very important assignments for exploration of Russia. And the whole point of the story is that Humboldt became very successful because he built these assets. He didn't know exactly how to find a way, but little by little he built these tremendous assets, and he lived from them for the rest of his life. And this is a good strategy for anyone who doesn't know exactly what to do. Step by step, try to build some assets, to build a reputation, to build copyrights, to build a network, because those assets eventually will make you successful.
Those are, I think, a great concoction to kind of want something greater than what you have now. You're talking about him, and it's very similar to my story to hear the fact that he was at a job that he hated, and there there's this inward longing for something more out of life, and there's many people who are there. That's why they're listening to a podcast like this. They want more out of life. They have dreams and stuff like that, but they seem so far away, right? They're stuck at a dead-end job. They have all these bills and debt, and so this life that they dream of seems so far away. But it's really cool that we're actually talking about these steps that you can take to do it. Something about the drawing away process, like getting by yourself or going on that pilgrimage or that journey to kind of get those notes or get those ideas or get those steps. How important is it that to kind of go into hermit mode essentially to get the game plan and then go out and kind of execute?
Well, from my research, this is extremely rare. I have drawn actually the opposite conclusion that most people will not make a big change until they are against the wall. And this is human psychology. It's very difficult when you have your routines, you have your life, you're all settled down doing something else, to go and say, okay, now I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to quit everything. I'm going to make a big change. It rarely happens. And let me just give you another example from the book. One of the stories that actually gave me the idea of sequentiality is the story of Luigi Cornaro. Cornaro is known in history because he was the first person who ever lived 102 years. He's registered, he's recorded. He lived in the 16th century. And he not only lived a very long life, but what is impressive about Cornaro is that when he was in his mid-30s, he was terminally sick. He was so sick, he could barely move. He had massive inflammation. The physicians, he saw different physicians. He was living in Venice. They told him to go home and prepare to die because they didn't see any possibility of recovery. And Cornaro, who was at that time he was 34, he went home, and instead of just giving up and say, okay, I'm going to die, I'm going to write my will, what he did was to try different experiments. He tried different diets. He changed his lifestyle in every aspect. He started to go to bed very early, to wake up very early in the morning. He stopped doing most of the things he was doing so far because he was a guy, he had a very disorderly life. He became very much adept to a vegetarian diet. He reduced the number of calories he ingested. Within 6 months, he recovered. He recovered totally and completely. He became extremely healthy. And then he continued with his lifestyle until he was 102 years old. And he wrote about it. And this is why we know about Cornaro. And the crux of the story is that Cornaro didn't just, as you said, he didn't just sit in a corner thinking, how can I live 102 years? It doesn't happen like this. He was against the wall. He was really dying. And then he had to find the solution. And eventually, by trial and error, he figured out a diet that nowadays in the 21st century that we know that is very healthy. He used to have organic milk, vegetable soups. I mean, he came up with these ideas by himself by trying different things. And when something didn't work, he stopped. And then in the end, he came up with this diet. But the message from the story is that Cornaro only changed his life when he was about to die. He had been living a very bad lifestyle for decades. This is why he was suffering from this massive inflammation. And eventually, when he was really dying, when he was against the wall, he changed. And this is a pattern that people will only seriously look for the sequence of steps when they are really suffering. If there is no suffering, the human psychology is very reluctant to change.
Yeah. You gotta wait till your back's up against the wall, or you kind of, I think a lot of people, we talk about suffering or whatever. Let me ask you about this, because I like to tie this into the dream, and I look at my life and what got me to do this full time, and kind of. I didn't jump. I was pushed, right? This was a great idea. It was something that I wanted to do. It kind of tormented me inside because I had this dream and this passion for what I wanted to do with my life. But it seemed so far away. And I was trying to take steps. I was trying to find out. I was studying other people, what worked for them. How can I transition? But it was never this thing, okay, let me just quit my job. Let me do this. I actually got fired, and it really just pushed me into it. So all of the things that I was studying, all the things I was, looking for these steps to take and to make connections and plan and try to get an income off of what I love to do versus the dead end job of what I had to do. You're talking about being like, tormented or being in this place that's unpleasant. A lot of people are in like a dead end job like that, and they're just looking for whatever they can do to kind of make that dream a reality. Would that be something that you're talking about as far as with their back up against the wall? I felt like I was.
Yeah, that's one of the I would say principles of sequentiality. You have to start the sequence somewhere, and you start moving, and then little by little you find the answers. But this is why I was talking about positive thinking, because the idea that you can have a goal and you say, okay, I'm going to become, I don't know, a CEO of General Motors, and you are going to work at this goal for 20 years is massively unrealistic. What my research shows, and I have really made a big issue of this in this book, is that what is very important, and you find in every successful, every happy person, is a very strong sense of direction. People have a sense of direction, say, I want to move in this direction, I want to do this. They don't know exactly how they're going to do it. They don't know exactly the goal. Cornaro didn't know that he was going to live 102 years when he started to recover, but he got in the right direction. And this is the whole point of sequentiality. Once you are in the sequence, you will find more information. You will find more opportunities. You will build on your reputation. You will build on your assets. You will have more visibility. Without this sequence, you can make as many plans as you want in your room. You can look at websites for hours, but you will never start the sequence. You really have to start the sequence, and then you can gather information little by little.
It kind of seems like the same thing to me, though. It seems like you kind of have to have a game plan before you can try to execute it. And I also think that we need to be positive. I think we need to be optimistic about it, because, like, as far as our dreams or whatever, because you would have people like around you that would doubt you, would say, no, you should have, if you wanted that in your life, you should have started that 10 years ago. It's too late for you. So I think that positive thinking and stuff like that comes into play when we're thinking about our dreams, about what we want to accomplish, right? I mean, don't we have to have a positive outlook on what we're trying to build?
Yes, I think positive thinking can certainly help. but you should not depend on it.
Yeah.
I think
it's
this
magic
is why
by itself.
I was talking about sense of direction. I never like to say goals because it's too specific. But if you have a sense of direction, say, I really like to do this. I want to make a living out of this. I think it's the right attitude. Okay. Without setting a very specific goal for yourself. Say, I want to make this amount of money by at the end of December, because you will be for sure disappointed. You put the pressure on yourself, which is totally unnecessary.
Yeah. So you see a lot of people like kind of doing that in like the spiritual movements where that's all they do is just say, think about it. You know what I'm saying? Just think about it, dream about it, talk about it, tell people about it. Like, I do believe in that, but it is the, you know what I'm saying, the hard work that pays off and the consistency and having the game plan. Because if we're just daydreaming about it and we don't do something to kind of bring it into our reality, then it's just like a great idea, right?
Yeah. I want just to mention a few more principles from the book. I think they would be useful for your audience.
Okay.
One of the aspects that systematically will break down sequentiality is when people are hypersensitive. And today in the 21st century, we seem to live in the era of hypersensitivity, where people get super upset and super angry when they hear something they don't like. And they say, oh, they spend sometimes the whole day ruminating because they heard something on TV and say, okay, I really hate this guy. Yeah. He should not be saying this kind of stuff. And this is very inefficient. And sometimes, I mean, one of the stories I recount in the book is the story of Dante Gabriel Rossetti. He was a great painter in the 19th century. He invented a new movement in painting, the Pre-Raphaelites. He was a poet, but the problem with Rossetti is that he was hypersensitive. He got a few bad reviews in newspapers. Newspapers were very powerful in the 19th century, where there were no social media. He got a few bad reviews, and he was so upset that he didn't want to go out. He started to drink. He spent his whole life indoors. He stopped painting, which was really a disaster because he was a genius. I mean, you see his work is really amazing, but he was too sensitive. He was trying to convince journalists that he was really a talented painter. It was a complete waste of time because he was talented anyway. He was selling a good amount of paintings. And this kind of attitude of hypersensitivity will destroy sequentiality in any case. Even if you're a genius, even if you make fantastic plans, even if you have 10-year goals, if you're hypersensitive, there is no way you will get anywhere because you will be criticized, you will be opposed, you will be insulted in all possible ways because there will always be people who don't like you, who envy you, whatever. Don't do that. I mean, Rossetti is a tragic example. He was a genius. He was very innovative. He was a great painter, a great poet, but he died very, very young. He died in his early 50s. Completely unnecessarily because he started to drink. Don't be hypersensitive. It's a trap. It's a terrible trap. And today in the 21st century, it's a big fashion.
Yeah, I know, right? I mean, you're 100% right. And I've seen people even recently, man. Recently, I have a good friend who may be watching this, but she got into a business deal with someone. I'm pretty sure she didn't really know that well. They make great products. They went out to the public to actually sell these things in the marketplace. Someone said some things they didn't like. Things didn't go a certain type of way. And my friend's business partner, super sensitive, freaked out, couldn't handle the pressure, couldn't handle things not going her way, and just freaked out and made a crazy scene and ended their business on the first venture that they went out. Others do it. I've seen musicians and artists do it, and people who are building platforms, and then things don't go their way, or they read bad reviews, or people question them and say, I don't think you should be doing this. And then they freak out and they undo everything that they've been working to build just for the simple fact of what you said. They're too sensitive.
Yeah, it's a pattern you find in history. You will rarely read about it in personal development books, but I tell you, it's a killer. It's a killer. You have to stay out of it. I just want to mention briefly another example. One of the aspects that most people don't like to hear this, but one of the things that really stops sequentiality and that keeps people down, keeps people stuck, is the reluctance to move. And this is something that, how can I say, is a bit uncomfortable for most people. If you are moving to another state, or to another city, if you are moving to another country, or learning another language, can be very uncomfortable, can be very disruptive. But to tell the truth is that many people will only succeed when they move. And this is because you might be living in an area where there are few opportunities. You might be in the wrong business. You might be in the wrong environment. You might be surrounded by people who criticize you for no good reason, just because they don't want you to change. Whatever. And one of the examples I give in the book is the story of Casanova. And Casanova is known to be a great seducer, but few people know how he became a millionaire, because he was a complete disaster. I mean, Casanova in his 20s, he was a walking disaster. He studied law. He was a very bad lawyer. He tried to get into the military. He was fired. He was prosecuted. He was very, very conflict prone. And he only actually made a great career when he moved out of Venice and he went to France. And then he became very wealthy within a few years because he found the right environment where he could use his talent. And this is something that people don't like to hear, but you might be in the wrong place. And the only solution might be to move. It's a very practical solution. Sometimes it's very annoying because you leave your friends and your family behind. But I tell you, when you see so many unemployed people, so many people who are complaining that they don't have opportunities, come on, move to another place, move to another country. And something that goes along with this, Derek, is that I always encourage in my books people to learn a second language. If you're in the US, for God's sake, learn Spanish. It's so easy. You're surrounded by people who speak Spanish. It will open your eyes. It will open your opportunities. It will open your career. It will make you more tolerant, more benevolent. And this is an asset. It's very easy to learn the language. Every child can learn 2 or 3 languages without any effort. If you spend 10, 15 minutes a day, you will speak a second language. For God's sake, if you do only one thing, in the next 10 years, try to learn the second language. It will change your life completely.
Wow, that reminds me. I've been watching a lot of interviews with hip hop artists. Right, once they finally make it, they tell you have to get out of your hometown. For one, you're going to have a big target on your back because of the people who were around you, who went to school with you, who don't believe in you, who want what you have, whatever the case is. And it's something about getting famous or blowing up in the town that you're from. And a lot of the guys who have been doing it for a long time and become successful, they say you have to leave your city. You can't stay there because you're going to keep running into problems and things like that. So many people around you are going to envy you or think that they deserve it and you don't. And it's funny too, because my mind always goes back to the scriptures, and I think about Jesus, where he talks about that a prophet is not without honor in his own in his own home, in his own town. He doesn't get the honor, he doesn't get the respect that and the support that he needs. But when you travel abroad, people don't know you. They don't, they see you for what you show them and for your talents and what you're able to bring to the table versus your past mistakes and your failures and stuff. Oh, we know this guy. We went to school with this guy. He's what? You're telling me this guy's a what? So something about, dusting your feet off and actually leaving that area that I think really is important. Let me ask you about this too, because you mentioned trial and error. There's a lot of people, a lot of motivational speakers. I know Will Smith talks about it a lot. Gary Vee, all of these guys are talking about it a lot now. They're talking about failure and how it's good to fail and it's positive to fail. And they say fail early, fail often. You're talking about trial and error, failure and mistakes, and not all failures are bad, right? Especially if we're learning from these mistakes, right?
To a certain extent, I would not recommend people to seek failure just for the sake of learning. Because one of the patterns I have identified in the research is that 95% of the failure can be avoided. The problem with human beings is that we want to reinvent the wheel all the time, and we start to do something, and then you say, okay, I'm going to learn to do this on my own.
Yeah.
And most of the time, it's a complete waste of time. If you're trying to build a platform, to build a reputation, to build a business, you can learn a lot just by looking on some web pages. It's free. And we are reluctant to do it because of human nature. We want to reinvent the wheel. We want to be heroes.
Mm-hmm.
We want to invent shortcuts. But I tell you, most of the time, we should not be making failures. We should not be making mistakes. If we just spend some time doing research. Let me just give you an example from the book. One of the stories I recount is the exploration of Antarctica. This happened in the early 20th century, and it's very interesting because you see 3 expeditions going to Antarctica, one from England, one from Scotland, and one from Norway. And the guy that went there from Norway, he actually checked the facts. He checked the kind of clothes you have to wear, the kind of dogs you need in order to move in Antarctica. He just checked. He spent a few months doing research, very easy research, and he did almost everything right. But the other people, the one from England and from Scotland, they froze and they died because they didn't check anything. They tried to reinvent the wheel. They didn't even check what kind of dogs. They bought some dogs, but the dogs died because they were not Siberian dogs. They were wearing the wrong kind of clothes. They got to wear this English wool, which is very nice, but when you get wet, you freeze. And they froze. They froze one after the other. It was horrible because they didn't check the facts. So there is no reason to learn from mistakes if you can avoid the mistakes. Try to spend some time checking what other people are doing. It was very easy for Amundsen, from the Norwegian guy, very easy to check what kind of dogs you need. He just went to Siberia and he checked the dogs and he got the right kind of dogs. And he calculated how many dogs he needed. And he put on top 20% margin and he made it. And the other people were stupidly taking ponies to Antarctica, and the ponies broke their legs and they died within days. I mean, when you look at the mistakes they made, they look stupid, but we do the same all the time. We try to reinvent the wheel. And this is what breaks sequentiality. You will not find the right sequence of steps if you don't spend some time doing research.
Yeah. So doing the proper research, you can avoid a lot of those mistakes that we're making, right?
Yeah, indeed. And I tell you, it's counterintuitive because we want to jump and we want to start right away and say, I'm going to start this, I'm going to start that. Yeah. Spend a few weeks doing research and you will save yourself a huge amount of problems and a huge amount of money.
Let me ask you about this. So we're talking about mistakes. I think, but whenever you do make the mistakes, learn from them, learn not to do that again, or go back and research and do it the right way, right? Something that's not working, and it could be, it could be many different variables depending on what you're doing. But I really like, the fact that you wrote this book and studying other people's mistakes as well, because like that's the biggest thing for me is like, for one, just to learn from our own mistakes, but two, learn from mistakes that other people are making. If they're doing something and it's not working and they continue to get the same results or whatever, somebody who's already done it before, like you said, there's a lot of research online. There's not, when we don't have to reinvent the wheel. People have already done this stuff and they're successful at it, and they've, they're telling you what works and what didn't work and things like that. So not only just learning from our mistakes, but for the mistakes of others as well, and kind of seeing how we can apply that to our lives. Indeed.
I just want to point out that human beings, we are built in a way that we hate confusion. We hate situations where we don't know exactly what to do. And we just prefer sometimes to make mistake after mistake instead of recognizing that we just don't know, because confusion is very uncomfortable. And let me just give you an example. You might have watched the movie. I'm sure you have watched the movie Casablanca. It's from the 1940s with Humphrey Bogart. The movie is fascinating because you see the love scenes between Humphrey Bogart and Ingrid Bergman. They look very realistic because they don't know exactly if they're going to stay together or not, and they are confused. Well, they were confused because they didn't know the end of the story. And the movie, I think it was so successful because it's so realistic. The producer was writing the script during the movie, and the actors were totally confused. They didn't know exactly where they're going to be in love, they're going to be together, they're going to die. They didn't know. So this is why you see these amazing scenes. I mean, you have to realize the very simple cinematographic means they have in the 1940s. They didn't have special effects. It was very, very simple. And they did it on studio. And they look perfectly true because it was perfectly true. It was one of the few movies that was shot in sequence. And this is why I use it as an example. It was pure sequentiality because they shot one scene after the other. The whole team of actors and writers, they were together during the shooting from beginning to end. And in the end, they produced this fantastic little movie. They thought it was not going to be a big success. But we like the movie so much because it's so realistic. It shows confusion in the most pure way. And this is something that human beings, we hate. And we like the movie so much because it shows how we feel every day. And if you want to get into sequentiality and find the right sequence of steps, you have to go through confusion. It is inevitable. You will never get A, B, C, D plan saying, okay, you have to go from A to B. It will never work. You can wait forever until you get all the dots on the I's. Don't do it. Try to find the right sequence, go through the confusion, and then you will find it.
That's awesome. I've been saying that for a while now, and it's kind of been kind of weird because I come out of Christianity and I come out of like the evangelical Christian realm. And when you know, the word confusion for them is a bad word. Like you said, I guess it's a bad word for humanity, but I think it's a good thing because we can use it as a tool exactly like you're saying. I've never heard nobody else say this, but I say confusion is a good thing because until you're in a state of confusion and disillusion, you're not going to start looking for the answers until you're confused. If you think you have it all figured out and everything's working good for you just in your own mind, but you're not producing the results, you know, and I think a state of confusion is good. When I was in a state of confusion, I jumped on Google. I started looking up answers, started trying to cross-reference and trying to make sense of what was happening in my life and my belief systems and things like that. But it didn't come until I was in a state of confusion. So use it for something good. That's awesome that you point that out. Let me ask you this. So you talk about organic growth, letting organic growth determine yourself. Is it your steps? Is that something that that we should keep doing it? Like if it's working, let's keep doing it because we're seeing growth because we're doing this formula, or these steps are working because we're expanding, we're growing in all areas and things like that?
Well, organic growth is a mixture of your talents and the market. And some people, when we talk about organic growth, sometimes people say, oh, I have to do whatever I want. I don't care about the market. I don't care about sales. I don't care about sponsors. This is a bit stupid. This is not organic growth. This is arrogance. Organic growth is to find the sweet spot between what you can do, what you want to do, and what people are willing to buy. And this is very difficult to do. But it's part of the sequence. If you don't find this sweet spot, the sequence will not work. Let me just give you an example from history. One of the great artists of the Renaissance was Giotto. Giotto is a fantastic example because he made a transition from the Middle Ages to the Renaissance. He painted for the first time in history. He was the first painter who painted emotions, who used realistic colors. In the Middle Ages, the paintings were very boring because they were very much rigid. The colors were very dark. It was the way they like it in the Middle Ages. But Giotto invented a new type of painting, a painting that today we consider modern. The problem with Giotto, and the story is fascinating, is that he came up with these ideas when he was in his 30s. He was painting basically what they did in the 11th, 12th century. They painted churches, and all the painted we have are multiple churches. But Giotto got the possibility to make a special assignment because there was a family in Padua. Giotto was living in Florence, and there was a family in Padua. They wanted to build a private chapel, and they hired Giotto for 2 years. He went to Padua, and he built scaffolding inside the chapel, and he painted the walls from beginning to end. He painted 30 different scenes. And for the first time in history, he came up with this amazing, innovative style, very naturalistic, beautiful colors. You can see them today still in Christmas cards. You see Giotto paintings all over the place. And what is fascinating is that Giotto came with this innovation. The paintings are beautiful, they are original, they are full of emotion, but he never did it again. For the rest of his life, and he lived until his mid-50s, he went back to his boring medieval painting. And why is that? I found this very intriguing. This is because he discovered that the sequence of steps he was following didn't work because there was no market. He painted this private chapel in Padua. It was very beautiful. It was very innovative. It was groundbreaking, but the church didn't like it. The market was not there. He found one customer who could pay for that, but 99% of the market was not that. They didn't like it. They thought it was weird. People didn't like to pay for weird things. So in the end, Giotto spent the last 20 years of his life painting again in a very boring way because it was the market. It was the sweet spot. He was a genius, but he could not sell it. He could only sell this kind of paintings. And he knew that if he tried to do something else, he would be blacklisted. He would be ostracized. He would lose his customers. He would destroy his workshop, and his children were working there. He didn't want to ruin his children. So eventually he did it. And the lesson is very important because you will only find the right sequence of steps if you try to find this balance between what you can do and what people are willing to buy. And it might not be exactly what you want. And most people who start a business, they end up doing something else because they realize that they are too advanced. The concept was not really right. They find a different approach, a different location, whatever. But they find this balance. And this is why it's so important to keep looking for the sequence. Because if Giotto had stopped when he painted this private chapel in Padua, he would have been forgotten because he would have stopped producing paintings. You have to find the sequence every day.
Wow. So it's like it's almost like a compromise, right?
Well, I wouldn't call it compromise because he had no choice. Basically, the idea was between suicide or to keep working. He decided to keep working because what was the option? I mean, the guy had an enormous talent for painting, and he could only sell this kind of paintings. He could not sell anything else.
Chapter 10, you're talking about why it's so difficult to see the winning path.
Yeah, it's amazingly difficult because we get into our heads. We become super arrogant. We become super positive, which can be very negative because if you tell yourself every day, I'm going to make it, I'm going to make it, and you will completely lose sight of reality, it doesn't work. So it's very difficult to find the winning path because to a great extent, we're still animals. We panic very easily. We are very emotional. We take little problems and we blow them out of proportion. The only way to find the winning path is to become objective, to become cool, to become calm in the face of opposition. Is very difficult to do. There is no simple formula. But when I look at every example of successful, happy people, they went through the confusion, they went through the emotion, and eventually, sometimes by sheer persistence, they found a way. And you have to get rid of your emotions when they are out of proportion, because they will drive you down. They will not, you might get motivated for a few minutes, but it's not a good deal. Try to be objective. Try to find the right sequence of steps by looking at the reality.
Awesome, brother. Thank you for that. I want to ask you this, just one final question, because all of these steps and all of these things, and we're talking about this book of sequences, sequentiality. You've got a bunch of other books. You've got 8 other books, and they all, like the titles of them, the different motivational, the philosophy of builders, thriving in difficult times, all of these different almost formulas in themselves, essentially, if we can apply the knowledge. How do they all fit together?
They all fit together because they are based on history. They are based 100% on real cases. What I do in my books is to extract principles from studying hundreds of biographies of different people in different areas. And I try to come up with principles that you can apply in your own life, principles that are logical, that are rational, that you don't have to be super extroverted to apply, because what annoys me enormously with these personal development books is that they assume that people are super extroverted and super cheerful. And this is so ridiculously unrealistic. I mean, try to take a walk in a mall and see how many people are super cheerful and unrealistic. I mean, you have a few, but for most people, it's better to try to find the right sequence of steps.
And these are things that can work for us if we just apply them, finding the sequences. And, and like you said, I think it goes back to watching what's worked for other people in the past, like literal things. It's not theories or, theoretical hypothesis about what could work. It was what actually did work. And I really like how you incorporate that in the book. John Vespasian, let people know where they can go to check out this book and check out some more of your work. You've got a really great website with tons of articles, interviews, and a bunch of really cool stuff. Let people know where they can go to check out your work.
I'm very, very easy to find. You just type John Vespasian on Google, on any search engine, just type John Vespasian. Even if you type it incorrectly, it doesn't matter, because the Google will correct you because the name is so unusual. So just type John Vespasian. You will find the books. You will find tons of free articles. There's a free newsletter. John Vespasian, very easy to find.
John, thank you for coming on the show, man. I really enjoyed this. I appreciate it.
Many thanks, Derek.
All right, talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, bye-bye. John Vespasian, ladies and gentlemen. Sequentiality. You've heard of spirituality? Have you heard of sequentiality? First time I've heard that word. Like I said, Google will correct you. If you try to type that word into Google, sequentiality, Google's going to try to correct you on that one too. But it's about SEO. If you type that in, you most likely his stuff's going to come up, his book and all of his stuff. So really cool interview. I agree with a lot of it, man. And I've been talking about this stuff, like I said, especially learning from your own mistakes. He approaches it more from doing the research and doing the studying so that you make less mistakes in what you're trying to bring to the table, what you're trying to create. Make sure you've done your homework. Make sure you've done the research. It's awesome. Like I listen to podcasts on spirituality. I listen to podcasts on everything under the sun that has to deal with spiritual essence and even religion and things like that. But when I wanted to start doing a podcast and I wanted to get better at podcasting, I started listening to podcasts about podcast. How to, and so much stuff that goes in on the back end that the listener just gets to click play, and you never know like what goes in on the back end of creating a good podcast. So like whatever you're wanting to do, wherever you're in that place that you want to bring something to the table, bring it into fruition, study everything you can on it. Study everything you can on that. Study the competition, study those who have done it and failed, study those who are doing it and are thriving. Like you can learn from them, right? It's really funny, and being a beacon or whatever. And I have a lot of people who are starting to do stuff, what I'm saying, in my realm, and I don't care sharing the tips or whatever. I see people copying what I'm doing because it's working. And people will do it, whether it's on the podcasting end with the podcast, or if it's on the hip hop end or whatever. There's things that I've done over the years that are working, and people are trying to copy it and stuff like that. And like I said, I can't get mad. Like, it's working. Like, do it. If it's working, do it. If I'm doing something that's not working, don't do it. Same thing, learning from people around you, and we could do it as far as like a business is concerned, or you can do it as far as relationships are concerned. Things like that. Learning from other people that are around you and learning from your own mistakes, and then doing the research, like you said, so that you don't make as many mistakes and spend money and time and energy working against yourself. That's very bad. But in the end, like I said, you still learn from it. You learn because it cost you. I would hope you learned. You spent several hundred dollars on something, or promoting something, or branding something that you didn't plan on to see, through to the end. Whenever you started it, I've been there. And you learned from that, and you paid for it, literally. And I've done it. I think we all have. But moving forward, like I said, get to the bottom of it. Study. Get obsessed with this kind of stuff, man. Whatever you're wanting to do. It was funny. He was talking about moving. If it's not working out, or there's not an audience, or there's not you're in a bad area for what you're wanting to do. It's weird because in the entertainment and the arts, like, everybody moves to California. If you want to be a rapper, you move to California or Atlanta, or there's other places you can go to, but essentially, you want to open a yoga studio, go to California, man. There's the stuff we're talking about, the spirituality and stuff like that. It's on every corner. I would thrive, man. I have people begging me to come there to do concerts in California and in Colorado, places like that are very much open to the type of stuff that I bring to the table. And it's funny, man. I had some friends over the other night, and they were just, commending me on what I do and how I've not given up. I'm in the Bible Belt. Like, I'm like as furthest as you can go in Alabama, all the way in the woods at the bottom. And here I am talking about spirituality. Here I am talking about psilocybin, mushrooms, and encounters, and then Jesus and stuff like that in the midst of it, and yoga and meditation, third eye activation, all of these type of things that don't really fly well down here in the South. But I could have easily tried to relocate and move to California, where I could get booked at shows and people would love to have me there. People would love to have me in Colorado, and the hippies and all that kind of stuff. They love it. That's a lot of my audience. But I've stayed true, not to kind of be ran out of where I live, just to bring it to the table here and essentially see change, man, and see this, be a part of the awakening of the Bible Belt, or people who are asking the bigger questions, or whatever the case is. It's not only me. I have other friends who have been consistent. I had a friend of mine 2 weeks ago who went downtown Mobile and set up a tarot card reading table down there where she was doing psychic readings. That hasn't been done down here. That's unheard of. And that's, for like, many people, it's not welcome. There's churches on every corner. They're used to their way of doing things. It's very much, a red state. And this stuff is taboo. But I really do think that there's a special blessing in it of being effective where you are, and not just saying, because like, even if I was to go to, those other places, and I probably could thrive, but I get really weird when everybody starts doing what I'm doing. Like he was saying, like he's talking about, wanting to be original and wanting to be unique and almost reinventing the wheel. Like with stylistically in music, like I'm in the Bible Belt doing this type of music. It hasn't been easy at all. But if everybody around me started doing it, or everybody was doing the same thing, then I would just feel like I'm one of the people, and I don't have something unique to bring to the table. So, being in the Bible Belt is kind of just being like, oh, you're that guy type deal, right? You're the only one around here doing it. But I'm not the only one anymore. We have other people we've been discipling and training up and recording and sending out. So there's other people down here doing it with me. So I'm not just by myself anymore. And so it's catching on, though. There's a lot of people waking up, and we got to have stuff for those people. Trust me, there's those conscious people who eat mushrooms and do LSD or whatever, and they grow their hair out, let it dread up, start hula hooping, and fire dancing and they leave. They move to Colorado. Like, I know a lot of people have packed up and moved to Colorado and just kind of found a place there. But it's like, you leave everybody else behind here. So if we could stick it out and thrive and be effective where we're planted right now and not just be ran out or whatever the case is. Look, I'm telling you, don't grow weary in well-doing, but just, be effective, man. But at the same time, thank God for the internet, because, we could disciple the nations through the internet, through something like this, in the privacy of my own home, be able to reach the world, reach the masses. And it's not something for me anymore to have to kind of proselytize to people or beg them to buy my product or beg them to watch my podcast. I just simply need to be effective. I simply need to show up and put it out there and make sure that it gets in the search algorithms, to make sure you see it and click it. So if you see something like this podcast and you watch it for a period of time and it resonates with you, and then if it does, then, you're going to stick around. You're going to watch it. You're going to support. If you hear my music and my music moves you, you're going to support it. You're going to buy the album. You're going to come to the concerts. You're going to do this stuff. I don't have to knock on your door and say and try to get you to convert to a belief system or an ideology that I subscribe to. No, I just put my truth out there, and if it resonates with you, welcome to the team. If it don't, keep moving. You know what I'm saying? And that's such a beautiful place for me to be now, and I've been there for some years, because coming out of Christianity, I'm trying to force you to believe what I believe. If you want to make fun and laugh at what we believe at and stuff, especially I'm in the Bible about, trust me. I just had the conversation the other day. They've been laughed at, mocked, scoffed, ridiculed. Now I'm successful. Now it's catching on. Now I get to wake up and do podcasts for a living. Now I get to wake up and make music about the astral realms for a living. You know what I'm saying? And it's financially paying off. So now, people don't want to look at the hard work. People don't want to look at those days that I've cried tears over this stuff, that I knew that this is what I was supposed to be doing, but I couldn't get no support, couldn't get no love. Even my best friends don't support. You know what I'm saying? And things like that. So, but it's about sticking with it. And there's a meme somebody shared. I think my buddy Drew, happy birthday to Drew Gower, a good friend of mine. He shared out a meme, and I want to read this meme right quick because I shared it to my Facebook wall. But it says, success comes from the thousands of hours of work that no one sees. No one sees. You've put in time, you've put in energy, you've put in research, you've put in effort, you've put in tears, you've put in blood, you've put in sweat to study, to create, to kind of bring something to the light, to kind of bring something into fruition. Nobody sees that. You get to see the polished up side. You get to see what we show you type deal. But nobody knows the stuff that you've been through and what you've been trying to build. And that's your credibility. That's what you have. That's yours. You can't undo that. That's working on it, man. That's what you have to, that gives you the right to do it. You earned it. Nobody gave it to you. You earned it. Pat yourself on the back. When people told you to quit, you didn't. People laughed at it, told you it was silly, it would never sell, it would never catch on. You didn't. Trust me. You don't know how many people over the years, even especially when I was doing gospel music, but I still get it even now. It's like, if you talked about, gangbanging, if you talked about drugs and women and stuff like that, man, you get a lot of play because you got a good voice, man. You got a good voice. You know how to rap, but ain't nobody trying to hear spirituality. Ain't nobody trying to hear gospel. Ain't nobody trying to hear that. But if you talk about other stuff, you'd be successful. You could easily say, you know what, you're right. Let me just do what they're telling me and be successful. But no, stuck it out. And now it's catching on. Now it's becoming successful, and it stayed the course, didn't give up, didn't throw in the towel, didn't look back. All of that stuff is what matters, man. I don't want to just have everything served to me on a silver platter. I don't want to just walk in someone else's shoes or ride somebody's coattail, man. Even the word Alabama itself means the thicket clearer, man. Just to go through where nobody else has gone and make a way where there was no way. Make a path and clear it out where there was no path. And that's what we've done, man. And kudos to those people who haven't given up. Kudos to those people where you look around you and everybody's given up. Everybody's tucking tail. Everybody's given up on their belief, on their faith, on their passion, on their vision, on their spouses. Come on now, preach. They've just given up. But shout out to you guys for sticking it out, working it out, not giving up, not getting tired. Man, hanging on, creating something, creating a way where there is no way. It's good stuff. We stuck it out. And I think if we can thrive here in the Bible Belt and be successful with new thought and spirituality and meditation and UFOs and psilocybin and all this other stuff that people find taboo, trust me, there's a growing number of people. Like, an audience is growing. Someone has to be here to shepherd people who are waking up, who have questions that the pastors aren't answering, that the evangelists aren't answering. Someone has to answer these questions. So here we are. Here we are in Alabama. Here we are wherever you are throughout the earth, wherever you're listening to this. There you are. But here we are on the internet, where people can just look up whatever. You can look it up, and you're going to find this podcast most likely if it's something to deal with spirituality, because that's why we try to cover it all. People, I have people coming at me. They're like, TruthSeekah, man, you had, and they have genuine concern, but I can't believe you interviewed this guy who says this, and it's all crazy, and it's demonic, essentially. I don't believe it. Why would you interview someone like that? You got to understand, man, every move is a calculated step. Every move is a calculated step. Each podcast, man, each name, each interview, like, I'm trying to tap into their fan base. I still approach it like I don't have a fan base. I still approach it like, hey, let me go out and reach the people in a movement that so-called is the truth movement. Everyone has the truth, or people are so-called looking for the truth. And if we have it, then we could sit by ourselves. And trust me, I know very smart people who are very book smart. They are studied. They can even school me in knowledge and school me in wisdom. But guess what? They've become hermits, and they're sticking at home, and they don't like dealing with people. They didn't pass the test. They just gave up. They got all that knowledge, all that wisdom, but they just keep it to themselves. You know? They grew weary in well-doing. You can't let that be you, man. I'm not going to do it. I'm going to keep on keeping on. There's a scripture, too. This is 1 Peter. I shared this out, too, and this is about chasing your dreams. This is about bringing something to the table. 1 Peter 5, 6, and 7. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time he may exalt you, casting all your anxieties on him because he cares for you. That's a really good scripture on many different levels, but it says, humble yourselves. It's like that's a sequence. The first part, the first rule, what do you need to do? Humble yourselves. You're too prideful. You're too arrogant. Become humble. Become like little children. Humble yourselves, therefore, under the mighty hand of God, so that at the proper time, not when you want it to happen, not when you're ready, not when other people around you are being exalted and you're being envious and you think you deserve it. It says, no, but at the proper time, God may exalt you. At the proper time, God can exalt you. That's one thing, don't put the cart before the horse, man. And I talk about this all the time. I thank God for the failures. I thank God for, the time spent. Because if I would have had, as big of a reach years ago that I have now, I would have messed it up. I would have did the self-sabotaging thing. I've done it, but I had a very small platform and, ran people off and offended people intentionally. You know what I'm saying? All of this kind of stuff instead of, learning from what I've learned from to actually bring something to the table like that. So, at the right time, when the timing is just right. And people grow weary in well-doing. People, he's like, okay, how much longer, Lord? How much longer do I have to withstand this crappy job? How much longer do I have to put up with these people? How much longer do I have to, endure this stuff? You have to keep on, man. I'm telling you. And then do all of the things that we've been talking about today. Do all the things we've been talking about on every podcast, every episode. I mean, we try to teach you different techniques and things on how to ground and how to find your center and find your peace when all of that stuff is going on, when it seems like everything's going to hell around you, when other people are abandoning their marriages, when other people are doing things they shouldn't be doing because you won't do it because you have the integrity that helps to keep you from day to day. That's the stuff we're trying to teach you, and I believe all of it can help you. And even a show like this one today about studying the sequence and the steps. Real good stuff. It all applies, every single bit of it, to create the life that you want for yourself spiritually. I really do believe spirituality is a part of it. I really do believe being happy is a part of it. Dealing with depression is a part of it. Being spiritual, healing others, healing thyself. It all is a part of it. What's up? Shout out to everybody holding us down on Facebook and YouTube in the comment sections there in the chat section. Shout out to, looks like Talia maybe? I don't know if it's kind of small text, but it looks like Talia. Chris Bars just got in. Christy Folks, everybody holding us down. Renee Ruiz, Libby, Jill Trango, Jesse Lee, Quentin, what's up, brother? All of you awesome people holding us down live here in the chat. You guys rock. Listening for the first time, good word so far. Keep fighting the good fight. From the sharpening report, maybe it's very small text, I can barely read this, but Ali G, what up? Chris says my car broke down again. I'm trying to stay shining. Take that breath. Peace. Be still. Speak to the emotion, speak to the situation, tell it to be still. Create it, man. It all happens for a reason. Christian, what up? Yeah, so with that being said, I think I've covered everything, man. Again, September the 22nd, I'm going to be in Tallahassee, Florida. We're going to be doing a concert at a Shanti Fest, and also going to be doing a live podcast. So that should be interesting. We'll go live and probably host it on Facebook, live stream it, and then, edit it down or YouTube, and then edit it down and post it up for the podcasting audience as long as there's decent audio. So I guess I got to get on top of that, how to record a live setting, but it's going to be fun. We're going to do live questions, Q&A from the audience, and going to be good stuff. September 22nd, Tallahassee, Florida. We also got something planned for November the 2nd here in Mobile. We're going to do another house show. And so make sure you guys make that as well. All of that info is at TruthSeekah.com. Hope to see you guys there. Also, thank you guys for the support via Patreon. Couldn't do it without you guys. It means the world. Head on over to Patreon.com/TruthSeekah. If you would like to support at any level of giving, you get a bunch of cool stuff. So it goes a long way, and you get really cool stuff. You get access to a bunch of music that's not available to the general public. So check that out. Everyone in the chat are sending prayers and good wishes towards Chris for his car. Hit me up, brother. We'll pray. Love you guys. And with that being said, I'm going to say peace and shalom. And we're going to do this again. Got a really good show planned for you guys coming up this Thursday with Joy Pugh. I know it's going to be good because of the situations and the circumstances that led me to book that show. So trust me, this Thursday is going to be good. It's going to be interesting. With that, peace and shalom. Love you guys.
Your way so much higher than mine, so much higher than mine, so much deeper than mine, so much deeper than mine.
Well, that does it for this episode, folks. To hear more episodes of the TruthSeekah podcast, head over to TruthSeekah.com. And if you're wanting to support the show and get rewards, go to our Patreon page at patreon.com/TruthSeekah.